My name is David Nelsen.
And where do you work?
I work for the Internal Revenue Service. The technical position is called a tax examining technician.
What do you want the American people to know?
We have very antiquated systems. They aren't integrated. We're basically handcuffed. One of the reasons I'm coming out is I'm not afraid of losing a career. I'll fall on the sword if it means I can help the American people and help everyone else at the IRS who are doing their jobs. I want to set an example for my kids. If I get too emotional, it leaves something that they can aspire to.
Your kids?
My kids. That they know my dad did that, and I'm going to bull ahead and do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
Oh, it's a scary thing for people. You can lose your career over doing the right thing.
David Nelsen is blowing the whistle on the IRS. He is a tax examining technician at the IRS out of the Covington, Kentucky office, a position that reviews and corrects tax returns. He is concerned about the inefficiencies plaguing the agency and the use of highly outdated technologies which are not integrated. At a time when there are discussions to reform and revamp the IRS, we met David at his home alongside his family, and he took the extraordinary step of going public, going on the record, and blowing the whistle on the outdated system called IDRS and what he would do to reform it.
What do you want the American people to know?
We have very antiquated software. We use a software called Integrated Data Retrieval System.
IDRS.
IDRS.
And it dates back to when?
Late 1960s. This tells you about IDRS, when it was first implemented, when it was implemented throughout all the service sites.
1969. That's when they put the man on the moon. And how do you think this system affects the IRS's efficiency?
A ton. We can't do anywhere close to what the American people think. The whole U.S. tax system being built on a program that was created in the late 1960s. That's absurd. It's command code driven.
Command code consists of low-level instructions for operating computers, and it is deemed outdated because of the emergence of higher-level programming languages that improve productivity and usability. It is similar to MS-DOS, which is so antiquated that it hasn't been widely utilized in our education system for decades.
You could think of like MS-DOS, but older. That's probably the most relevant thing that people could think of. We could probably reduce the size of the IRS substantially with changes. Programs, a centralized inventory system, replacing IDRS.
This is your suggestion.
In light of the IRS drafting plans to cut its workforce by as much as half through a mix of layoffs, attrition, and incentivized buyouts, David has solutions on how to reform the IRS.
This is something I made kind of as a hobby on weekends.
You basically created a solution to reform the IRS as a hobby.
For my small unit. I'm a huge geek.
You're a patriot as far as I'm concerned.
The IDRS system is a system which enables IRS employees to have instantaneous visual access to certain taxpayer accounts. The problem is the system is so antiquated, it takes an unusually long time to get basic tasks accomplished. Mailing a letter to a taxpayer, copying and pasting addresses, and transferring information from one to the other, David says this is all hurting the American people through extreme inefficiencies, and he walked us through the Kafkaesque process IRS employees have to deal with.
6112 letter. To complete the letter, we have to copy from IDRS the taxpayer's name and address into that letter, manually copy it into there, and then we save that to a case file. It also fills in information from mail-out dates, where we have the date the letter is sent out, we have a purged due date, that gets copied and printed into the letter. We have to basically just copy and paste.
So this is IDRS right here.
This is IDRS. This is a disclosure tool we use during calls. We put the reason of contact, we enter the taxpayer information, and then there's a drop down and it'll pull up the business information. We ask questions to verify who the taxpayer is. We could do a lot to improve things for the American taxpayer. This tells you about IDRS, when it was first implemented, when it was implemented throughout all the service sites, and then all the service sites in 1973, and then Congress has been notified of this. It's been reported to them for years, and there's some money that was provided as part in the Biden administration under the Inflation Reduction Act to improve things, but it was more of a Band-Aid instead of an actual fix. It kept IDRS, but it funded small programs to make things a little more efficient in other areas, but it didn't fix the actual problem.
Everyone knows about it.
Everyone at the IRS, and I'm speaking about it, but in general, we're told not to. I can automate a lot of the things that I have to manually do, and I can put it on a second screen that I don't have to look at. It can fill in the information, and then I can do a quick review to make certain everything's accurate. Then click the next button, it'll fill out the next PDF, and then once it's done, I can do a quick check, and I could be more efficient if I had permission to use it. It's not even that it would have taxpayer information. It's for anything to get approved as a tool. There's a ton of people it has to go through for approval.
This is a 50-year-old system, and it needs to be updated.
Yeah.
Political solutions are slow to come.
What is incredibly frustrating to me, Congress has been notified of this. It's been reported to them for years. And there's some money that was provided as part in the Biden administration under the Inflation Reduction Act to improve things, but it was more of a Band-Aid instead of an actual fix. It kept IDRS, but it funded small programs to make things a little more efficient in other areas, but it didn't fix the actual problem.
You encountered any issues when trying to report system errors or deficiencies?
I'm speaking about it, but in general, we're told not to.
Told not to? What do you mean?
It's instruction from Treasury.
David describes his motivation on why he's doing this.
One of the reasons I'm coming out is I'm not afraid of losing a career. I'll fall on the sword if it means I can help the American people and help everyone else at the IRS who are doing their jobs. I want to set an example for my kids. If I get too emotional, it leaves something that they can aspire to.
Your kids?
My kids. That they know my dad did that, and I'm going to follow in his footsteps. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to do what I can to ensure that other people aren't harmed, to protect others, to protect family, to protect strangers. Just do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
Oh, it's a scary thing for people. You can lose your career over doing the right thing. I'm going to bull ahead and do the right thing.
David's commitment to doing what's right goes beyond his professional life. It's deeply personal. His desire to set an example for his children and leave behind a legacy that represents honesty, integrity, and the importance of fighting for change is what seems to drive him. In his own words, he wants to make a difference, not just in his workplace, but in the world.
But what do you think about your father? He says he wants to set an example for all of you.
He's better than other fathers.
Better than other fathers. I think I agree with that. He's an example of what a father should be.
David's words may sound like whistleblowing to some, but for him, he says it's simply sharing the truth about the inefficiencies.
You think that you're whistleblowing?
For this, a little, I'm not sharing anything that is unknown. The problem is that everyone knows this, but the American people.
What made you this way? You're a very unique individual. Most people don't work for the IRS and blow the whistle, so to speak, on the inefficiencies. And was it your upbringing? Is it God? Is it circumstance? What do you think made you the way that you are?
Helping others. I'm a civil servant. My job is to ensure a fair and just tax system for the American people. I love helping others.
David showed us his home office and describes his disability that he's faced with.
This is my office area. I built and did all this myself. I have all this insulation on the walls to try to keep it warmer because I'm very temperature sensitive. I'm limited with my disability. I can only handle so many certain positions. I have a lot of limitations, and it's made me feel more free in taking actions and doing things, because I maybe have a few more years, I think, at best.
One thing that struck me in the household was the children's admiration. It was palpable. They looked up to him and they helped him with his disability. They seemed to be willing to have his back. There wasn't any sign of fear in their home despite the enormity of what their father had chosen to do. When they were standing around, they held on to him and they looked after him. In all of my journey, I had never seen such a loving household as this man.